happening. A well-organized lie. A well-organized lie. It beats a disorganized truth every time. Who we?
A pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo killer, I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. Pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo killer, I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling. Who do you believe in? People bringing misinformation when that information ain't disinformation, that's disinformation. Gotta know the difference in information, get information. With the pseudo killer army hunting pseudo, cause you gotta train your mind to fight against them pseudo judo. People with the scholarship salute, we give them kudos. But the people with that look of shit, we look and see straight through those like telescope. If you ain't speaking fast, we gotta tell them folks and let them know the truth of. You bringing malinformation to blast, then you the Ku Klux. Like say, don't talk me to death, bro, what the proof of? Good juju chillin', why you wanna go way bad juju up? Shalom boy got the tank in the cut. I'm in Sosa world plotting on the kick though with Kent. Come in Tiffany gave me the pseudo names on the list and said went and got the low. Anthony got him in the scope, Gullah and Gozy make sure DNA ain't a problem for them folks. Cause a pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo killer, I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. Pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo killer, I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey. I'm a pseudo killer, intellectual sunsling, hey.
We're not attacking individuals. We're attacking the information and attacking the methodology. This is long time coming right here. Let them know that we right there, running neck and neck with all other communities. We will not be left behind.
All right, let's get it. We have an awesome presentation for you tonight by pseudo killer official Cedrick Ortega. So, without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to Cedrick.
Good evening, Juju, and always thank you for hosting the platform. We can't do this without you, Juju, so I appreciate you so much. But you know what time it is. The last couple of weeks, the pseudo-isms and the weird claims and the misinformation and just wrong positions have been raising their heads in several debates and in general conversations that has been had in terms of how we understand and engage with nature. I need to give a shout out to Eric Graham, who put me on this particular book and particular author, which is going to be the foundation for this presentation. Of course, we're going to always draw on other sources. And also Pandemus, who referenced this particular gentleman or particular doctor in his last debate as well, where a lot of the fallacies and debunked arguments were brought forward again. So I think it was an appropriate time to do this presentation, slow the conversation down, and address these points one by one, so that as the pseudo killers do, it is documented and we know what's going on. So without further ado, I've asked Juju to share my screen and we can get right into this presentation. As soon as my screen is sharing, Juju, let me know because I can't see.
Done.
Okay. God, the failed hypothesis. Inspired by Victor Stenger's God, the failed hypothesis. How science shows that God does not exist. All right. So let's start. To demonstrate how methodological naturalism is a word you continuously have heard me using since about since about 4 years ago, when we laid the foundation for how we are going to engage in the community. We established what methodological naturalism is, but I think it's necessary to continue to go over it. It serves as a foundation for atheism by providing natural explanations for the universe and life without invoking supernatural causes. This presentation draws heavily on Victor Stenger's God, the failed hypothesis. Key themes: understanding what methodological naturalism is, the scientific critique of religious claims, and natural explanations for the phenomena traditionally attributed to God. Victor Stenger, he was born in 1935 and he died in 2014. He was an American physicist, philosopher, and author who became widely known for his critiques of religious and defense of atheism. He was a strong proponent of applying scientific methods and principles to evaluate religious claims. This is something I always say. When you make a claim about reality, we have tools in which we can test these claims, particularly those invoking supernatural phenomena. Stenger held a PhD in physics and conducted research in particle physics and astrophysics. His scientific background enabled him to rigorously address topics where religious and science intersect, especially claims about the existence of God or supernatural forces. He was
Are you
affiliated.
moving your slides? Are you still on slide one?
Yes, I'm still in slide one.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I got it. Thank you. He was an affiliate of the organizations like the Center for Inquiry and the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. What is methodological naturalism? It is an approach used in science and critical inquiry that assumes all phenomena can be explained by natural causes and laws without invoking supernatural or metaphysical explanations. So if your explanation for a particular phenomena includes a supernatural, it is not science. It is a practical framework rather than a claim about the nature of reality, guiding how we investigate and understand the natural world. Key points about methodological naturalism: its epistemological basis. It is rooted in the idea that empirical evidence, testability, and falsifiability are the cornerstones of reliable knowledge. Supernatural claims, by their nature, lack these qualities and thus falls outside the scope of this methodology. So again, to use science or to use this process to then establish your supernatural claims is erroneous. And we continuously see this being done. Distinct from ontological naturalism, unlike ontological naturalism, which asserts that only natural things exist, methodological naturalism does not make metaphysical claims. It merely confines the tools and methods of inquiry to naturalistic explanation because they are the only ones that we can systematically test and verify. Can systematically be tested and verified. Sorry. So that distinction is paramount. It is what we can test and verify is what we can speak about. So to make claims about things that exist outside of time and space is not part of the ontological nor epistemological basis of knowledge. Applications in science. In science, methodological naturalism is a working assumption. For example, biologists studying evolution rely on natural processes like mutations, selection, and genetic drift to explain biodiversity without considering supernatural interventions. Neutrality towards worldviews. Methodological naturalism does not affirm or deny the existence of the supernatural. It simply brackets it out of scientific investigation. Thus, this is compatible with a range of philosophical or religious beliefs, as long as those beliefs do not demand supernatural explanation in scientific context. Now, this point here is valid for the argument about giving science a phenotype. White man science versus African science versus. No, if you're applying this methodology, it stays away from your philosophical or religious beliefs. You can use this system objectively. In summary, methodological naturalism is a tool for understanding the natural world by sticking to observable, testable, and repeatable phenomena, ensuring objectivity and reliability in our explanations. By excluding supernatural explanations, methodological naturalism aligns with atheism, which denies the necessity of a deity. Science has demonstrated time and again that we do not need supernatural forces to explain the universe. That's a quote from Victor Stenger. God as a testable hypothesis. Stenger focused on the God of theism, a being who is omniscient, omnipotent, and benevolent. Such a God is often claimed to intervene in the world, answer prayers, and create the universe with purpose. These claims imply observable effects that can, in principle, be tested. Again, if you make a claim about reality, we have the means in which we can test it. Let's go. Example of failed test. Intercessory prayer studies how no measurable effects, for example, the STEP study, Benson and colleagues in 2006, no evidence of divine intervention in natural disasters or healing phenomena. In the STEP study, the study of the therapeutic effects of intercessory prayer conducted by Herbert Benson and colleagues and published in 2006 is one of the most comprehensive studies on the efficacy and of intercessory prayer in clinical settings. It investigated whether prayers offered by strangers had a measurable impact on the recovery of patients undergoing coronary artery bypass surgery. The study involved 1,802 patients at 6 medical centers, all of whom were undergoing coronary artery bypass graft surgery. Patients were randomly assigned to one of 3 groups. Group 1, patients who were prayed for but were not told about the prayer. The second group, patients who were not prayed for and were not told otherwise. And the third group, patients who were prayed for and informed that they were being prayed for. Prayers were conducted by Christian prayer groups using specific phrasing asking for successful surgery and quick recovery. The group had no personal connection to the patients. The researchers monitored complications within 30 days post-surgery, focusing on differences in recovery and rates of complications between the groups. Patients in group 1, the ones prayed for, not informed, and group 2, prayed for, not prayed for, showed no statistical significant difference in complication rates or recovery outcomes. Intercessory prayer did not improve health outcomes when patients were unaware that they were being prayed for. Patients in group 3, the group that was prayed for and informed, had a higher rate of complications, 59%, compared to groups 1 and 2, who had 52% each. This unexpected result led researchers to hypothesize that knowing that they were being prayed for may have induced performance anxiety or stress. The study concluded that intercessory prayer had no significant positive effects on medical outcomes. It also raised the possibility that awareness of being prayed for could increase adversely affecting recovery. Some critiques. from religious communities argue that prayer is not a mechanical process and that isolating it from other factors, for example, personal involvement, faith of the patient, misrepresents its nature. The study focused on Christian prayer and specific phrases, ignoring other religious practices or forms of prayer. Some argue that the study inadvertently highlighted psychological impact, for example, stress from knowing one is prayed for, rather than truly testing spiritual efficacy. The STEP study is often cited as evidence against the efficacy of intercessory prayer in clinical contexts. While it does not disprove the existence of God or the personal value of prayer, it challenges the claim that prayer has measurable external effects on physical health in controlled settings. It remains a landmark study in the intersection of science, religion, and healthcare. So, absence of evidence as evidence of absence. When sufficient research fails to find evidence for a phenomenon, it is reasonable to conclude it does not exist. No evidence for cosmic fine tuning required a designer. Failed claims of miracles, for example, the Lourdes healings. Stenger's perspective is that the absence of detectable evidence of divine intervention undermines religious claims. One example showing the cosmic fine tuning does not require a designer is the anthropic principle in conjunction with multiverse hypotheses. These concepts provide natural explanations for the observed conditions of the universe without invoking a supernatural designer. The anthro, the anthropic principle states that the universe's physical constants and laws appear fine-tuned for life simply because we exist to observe them. If the universe were different, we wouldn't be here to notice it. This principle reframes fine-tuning as an observable bias rather than evidence of design. The well-known example of fish observing that it lives in the water might conclude that its environment is finely tuned for aquatic life. But this is simply because the fish could not exist in non-aquatic environment. Similarly, life could only arise in a universe with conditions suitable for life. So let's take a listen to what the anthropic principle is.
Imagine entering a room with 150 dice on a table and all of them showing the number 6. You would immediately assume that something is wrong with those dice. They've not been thrown at random because it's very improbable that they will land just like that. The same puzzle is being faced by cosmologists as they try to figure out why is it that certain constants of nature, among them the cosmological constant lambda, take on the value they do in our universe. The value of lambda is very, very small, and it's thought to be responsible for the accelerated expansion of the universe. However, we don't understand why it is that it is so small and yet non-zero. There is more. If we change the small value of lambda by just a little bit, in other words, if we change the outcome of one of the dice by just a little bit, the universe as we know it would not exist. It would be a very different universe in which we, as human beings, would not be able to thrive. So why is it that we live in such an improbably finely tuned universe? One possible answer comes from string theory, which postulates that we're actually part of a much grander reality called the multiverse, in which different universes coexist, up to 10 to the 500 of them, all of them with different values of the cosmological constant. And so only those universes which have a value of the cosmological constant that's just right for us will be the ones in which we, as human beings, can possibly live. And therefore, all of the other universes are impossibilities, and we are left to live in the one improbably fine-tuned universe that we observe. That is the anthropic principle.
Okay, so now we understand what the anthropic principle is. Let's continue. Did I go too far? No. The multiverse hypothesis posits that our universe is just one of countless others, each with different physical constants. In such a scenario, it is not surprising that at least one universe, ours, has conditions suitable for life. The anthropic principle and multiverse hypothesis provide a naturalistic explanation for the apparent fine tuning of the universe. This framework eliminates the need for a designer by showing that life friendly conditions can arise as a matter of probability and observable bias rather than intentional design.
Well, there are many ways to the multiverse. Maybe a good place to start would be what I consider the simplest of all, which is to imagine the possibility that space goes on infinitely far, right? If you were to get into a rocket ship and head out into the cosmos, would you at some point hit a brick wall? No, most of us don't think that's the case. Would you circle back to your starting point, like what would happen on the Earth's surface if you took a similar journey? That's possible. Or would you simply keep on going forever? We don't know, but let's take that third possibility seriously. If we do, there's a startling conclusion, and it's simply this. You and I were just the configuration of particles, as is the Earth and the Sun and so forth. If the configuration of particles repeats someplace out there in the cosmos, it means all that we know is repeating.
That is
So there are
Sean
many ways.
Carroll. That is Sean Carroll. Lourdes healing refers to alleged miraculous healing that have occurred at the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes in France. Let me make sure here I didn't skip anything.
So there are many.
Yeah, okay, good. Sorry. Lourdes healing refer to the alleged miraculous healing that have occurred at the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes in France, a major Catholic pilgrimage site. The site is famous for claims of miraculous cures, often attributed to the intercession of the Virgin Mary. However, these healings raises questions about the nature of miracles and how they are evaluated, especially from a scientific perspective. Thousands of people have claimed to experience miraculous healings at Lourdes, often from conditions considered medically incurable, such as blindness, paralysis, and cancer. The Lourdes Medical Bureau, which investigates such claims, has officially recognized 70 verified healings as miraculous, though this number is small compared to the thousands of claims made over the years. The Lourdes Medical Bureau, established in the early 20th century, carefully scrutinizes claims of healing through a rigorous medical process. To be classified as miracles, the healings must meet several criteria. The disease must have been diagnosed by medical professionals. The person must show no signs of the disease after healing. There must be no natural medical explanation for the healing. All right, let's continue. Spontaneous remission. Some skeptics argue that the healings are examples of spontaneous remission, which is a well-documented but poorly understood phenomena where a disease such as cancer suddenly improves or disappears without medical explanation. The placebo effect, a psychological impact of belief, prayer, and the intense emotional environment at Lourdes might play a role in improving patients' health, especially in cases of conditions influenced by stress or mental health, for example, chronic pain or certain psychosomatic disorders. Psychosomatic meaning it's primarily in your head that these symptoms, there's no physical trace of these symptoms, but you actually experience them. Confirmation bias, we know this one all too well. Pilgrims seeking miraculous cures may focus only on healings that lift their expectations and fit their expectations, and ignore the vast majority of cases where healings do not occur, contributing to the perception of miraculous outcomes. The hit and miss. You remember the hits, but you forget the misses. We have that as a human trait with almost everything we do. In some cases, medical professionals have found plausible natural explanations for so called miraculous healings, such as misdiagnosis, mistaken records, or the gradual improvement of the condition. From a theological standpoint, believers may view these healings as signs of divine intervention, an expression of God's will, or a manifestation of faith. For Catholics, the miracles at Lourdes are considered acts of grace, demonstrating the intercession of the Virgin Mary on behalf of the faith. Now, I wonder how this lady could be a virgin after having had more siblings, as Jesus had more siblings. But that's just a side note. While the scientific method requires evidence that is testable and repeatable, the nature of miracles, by definition, rare, extraordinary events, does not easily fit into the empirical framework. The problem of testing miracles lies in their singular nature, making them difficult to analyze systematically. The Lourdes healings remain controversial from a scientific standpoint, from a scientific viewpoint. While some cases are acknowledged as unexplained, most healing can be accounted for by natural causes such as spontaneous remission or the placebo effect. From a religious perspective, these events are often viewed as acts of divine grace, but their classification as miracles depends on one's faith, not an empirical scientific evidence. The phenomena highlights the tension between personal belief and scientific skepticism when it comes to extraordinary claims. All right. Let's get into one of the discussions that we were having over the last couple of days, and it was surrounding about the creation narrative that is within the confinements of the biblical text. And so this is going to be a very interesting part of this breakdown. Natural explanations for the universe, the Big Bang, and cosmology. The traditional claim that the universe requires a creator to explain its origin is rooted in a cosmological argument, which argues that everything that begins to exist must have a cause, and that the cause is often attributed to a creator, typically God. This argument has been central in various theistic, philosophical, and religious traditions. However, this claim is increasingly challenged by scientific, philosophical, and logical perspectives. The traditional claim often begins with the principle of causality, which asserts that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Since the universe began to exist, according to the Big Bang theory, it must have had a cause, which is typically identified as a creator. The argument posits that there must be a first cause, something that exists without being caused itself, that explains the origins of the universe. This first cause is usually defined as a necessary, uncaused, eternal being, often identified as God. This is all assertions, as we will continue to see. Scientific explanation. Modern cosmology, particularly the Big Bang theory, suggests that the universe had a beginning approximately 13.8 billion years ago. However, the theory does not necessarily require a creator. The origins of the universe can be described in terms of natural law, like quantum mechanics, which allow for spontaneous creation of particles and energy from a quantum vacuum. Some physicists, such as Stephen Hawking, have argued that the universe could have emerged from nothing, quote unquote, through quantum fluctuations without the need for a creator. Here we go.
Big Bang Theory. It is the modern theory in terms of the origin of Earth. If you remember how nebular hypothesis is the early theories, and in that we read about the formation of sun, stars, planets, asteroids, etc. In Big Bang Theory, scientists decided let's look at the larger picture. Let's find out how the universe came into existence. So, whenever you hear the word Big Bang, you must immediately recollect that it is about the expanding universe hypothesis. So, basically, it is an effort to explain what happened at the very beginning of our universe. Now, many discoveries in astronomy and physics have shown beyond a reasonable doubt that our universe did, in fact, have a beginning. Prior to that moment, there was nothing. During and after that moment, there was something, that is our universe. The Big Bang Theory is an effort to explain what happened during and after that moment. So, how did we come to this conclusion? In 1920, Edwin Hubble provided evidence that the universe is expanding. Edwin Hubble is the same guy after whom the famous Hubble Space Telescope is named. He said, as time passes, galaxies move further and further apart. There is an experiment associated with it. Take a balloon and mark some points on it to represent the galaxies. Now, if you start inflating the balloon, the points marked on the balloon will appear to be moving away from each other as the balloon expands. Similarly, the distance between the galaxies is also found to be increasing, and thereby the universe is considered to be expanding. But I want you to notice this. Besides the increase in the distances between the points on the balloon, the points themselves are expanding. But in reality, the scientists have no real evidence about the expansion of galaxies. But they do believe that the distance between galaxies is increasing. Hence, we can say that the balloon example is only partially correct. Now, the Big Bang Theory considers the following stages in the development of the universe. In the beginning, all matter forming the universe existed in one place in the form of a tiny ball, that is, singular atom, with an unimaginably small volume, infinite temperature, and infinite density. Well, to be honest, where did it come from? We don't know. Why did it appear? We don't know. It is thought to exist at the core of black holes. Black holes are areas of intense gravitational pressure. The pressure is thought to be so intense that finite matter is actually squashed into infinite density. It's a mathematical concept which truly boggles the mind. Now, in the second stage, this tiny ball exploded violently. This led to a huge expansion. The universe that we know was born. Time, space, and matter all began with the Big Bang. In a fraction of a second, the universe grew from smaller than a single atom to bigger than a galaxy. And it kept on growing at a fantastic rate. It is still expanding today. It is now generally accepted that the event of Big Bang took place 13.7 billion years before the present. Now, within the first second of the Big Bang, some energy was converted into matter and antimatter. These two opposite types of particle largely destroyed each other, but some matter survived. More stable particles called protons and neutrons started to form. Protons are positively charged and neutrons are negatively charged particles. Over the next 3 minutes, the temperature dropped below 1 billion degrees Celsius. It was now cool enough for the protons and neutrons to come together, basically attract, to form hydrogen and helium nuclei. After 300,000 years, the universe had cooled to about 4,000 degrees. Atomic nuclei could finally capture electrons to form a fully fledged atoms. Then the universe became transparent and got filled with clouds of hydrogen and helium gas. So, this is the story of the universe, otherwise known as the Big Bang Theory. If you want to see more of such educational content,
So, natural explanations for the universe. The cosmological argument assumes that an infinite regress of causes is impossible and thus there must be a first cause. However, some philosophers challenge this assumption. For example, David Hume questioned whether the concept of a first cause is coherent or whether the universe could have always existed in some form, eliminating the need for a beginning at all. The idea that the universe requires a creator is increasingly questioned by naturalistic explanations, such as multiverse hypothesis, the theory that our universe might just be one of many in a multiverse, which with its own set of physical laws and constants. In this scenario, our universe is just one possible outcome, and no creator is needed. You just saw the little video about that a little while ago. Self-contained universe. Some cosmologists propose that the universe may be self-contained, meaning it does not require an external cause or creator to explain its origin. It could have always existed in some form. It could have arisen spontaneously from quantum fluctuations. These are all alternative to the it is an absolute necessary first cause. You assert these things, and we have arguments to the contrary, making that assertion just that, an assertion. It is not a given in any argument. It does not go that we automatically accept that assertion in any discussion. So to claim that your argument both follows logically because of the premises being true, you already realize that the premise is being challenged, so it's not true and not accepted as fact. The argument that the universe must have a cause raises the question: if there must have had a cause, doesn't God also requires a cause? And this is where you get the special pleading from those proposing a supernatural agent. Some proponents of the cosmological argument suggest that God is a necessary being who exists outside the laws of causality. However, critics argue that this raises additional metaphysical challenges, such as why a necessary being, God, doesn't need an explanation for like everything else does. This is a special pleading argument. You can't. That's special pleading, and we just realize that there is no necessity for a creator when the arguments are being examined, and we have a theoretical basis within the scope of physics to challenge that notion. The traditional claim that the universe requires a creator to explain its origins faces significant challenges from both scientific and philosophical perspective. While the cosmological argument remains an important aspect of theistic thought, naturalistic explanations such as quantum mechanics and the multiverse hypothesis offer alternatives that do not invoke a creator, and thus align better with methodological naturalism, and which is the foundation for science. No claims for and of a supernatural deity. The question of whether the universe requires a creator ultimately depends on one's worldview, and the debate is ongoing in both philosophical and scientific communities. So to assert these things as mere fact when we have no empirical data supporting them is faulty reasoning, and to claim things being necessary without establishing that they are truly necessary doesn't provide you with neither a logical or sound argument. Your premise is not true. Victor argues quantum mechanics allows something to come from nothing, in quotation marks. Indeed, something will come from nothing because nothing is a more unstable state. Quantum mechanics shows that particles can arise spontaneously from a vacuum. In quantum mechanics, the vacuum is not an empty, nothingness space, but rather a state of minimal energy, full of quantum fields. Even in this vacuum state, the fields still fluctuate due to the uncertainty principle, which states that there is always some inherent uncertainty in energy and positions at very small scales. If you understand the electron clouds that surround atoms, which provides you with a probability, the definite position of that particle, because it is always in flux, it is always moving, for you to determine it is at the point that you measure it, then it has a fixed position. Otherwise, we are given a probability of field in which we may detect, in which that particular electron will be detected. But that particular point, when it collapses, is the point that you measure it and you know exactly where it is. The process is called quantum fluctuation. Although these particles exist only for a very short time, in the order of Planck time, their existence can be measured indirectly, such as through the Casimir effect or radiation from black holes, Hawking's radiation. An example of spontaneous particle creation is the Hawking's radiation around black holes. Stephen Hawking proposed that virtual particles pairs are created near the event horizon of a black hole, where one particle falls into the black hole and the other escapes, becoming real radiation. This theoretical prediction was later confirmed through indirect evidence as an example of how particles can emerge from what we perceive as the vacuum.
When you think of a vacuum, you might think it's empty and there's nothing there. But in the world of quantum mechanics, that's not the case. The vacuum is actually filled with virtual particles that are constantly fluctuating in and out of existence due to fluctuations in the vacuum energy. So what does that mean for us? Well, these fluctuations result in the temporary and random fluctuations of energy, and they affect the values of physical quantities, like the electric field. And it's all governed by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which basically says that the more we know about a particle's position, the less we know about its momentum and vice versa. This concept of quantum fluctuations is important in many areas of physics, from cosmology to black holes and even superconductors. When you think of a vacuum, you might...
Multiverse hypothesis. Max Tegmark multiverse hypothesis is a framework that categorizes the concept of multiple universes into 4 distinct levels, each with increasing degrees of complexity and abstraction. Tegmark, a physicist and cosmologist, explores these ideas in detail in his book Our Mathematical Universe 2014, arguing that a multiverse is not just possible, but may be a natural consequence of physical laws. No fine-tuning needed. The multiverse provides a natural explanation for the apparent fine-tuning of physical constants. In an infinite set of universes, at least one, ours, would have the right conditions for life. Testability. Critics argue that a multiverse is inherently untestable, making it a philosophical rather than a scientific hypothesis. Tegmark countered that indirect evidence such as internal inflation supports some level of the multiverse.
Excuse me, Cedrick.
Yes?
You're still on the title slide. Is that correct?
No.
Yes, everybody sees the title slide since you've been presenting.
Oh,
I kept trying to tell you.
but I'm changing the slides. I'm in the.
You're not.
Am I sharing?
Yes, you're sharing. Now you just changed the slide. Now you're on multiverse hypothesis.
So if I go to
Now don't do
slideshow
anything else.
presentation, I went to slideshow presentation and you don't see it. So now
No,
I'm
you see it, but I think you're not on, I don't think you were on slideshow presentation though.
Did it just change?
It just changed.
But
I
I'm
kept
doing
trying
nothing
to text
different.
you.
Did it change again?
No, it's still on multiverse hypothesis.
Okay, that's because it's not working in slideshow.
So yeah, you got to do it manually. That's what I tried to tell you in the beginning.
Okay.
I knew you were. It wasn't accurate. Because you have beautiful slides, so people need to see them.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Tried to let you know. I thought I'd interrupt you because it's 40 minutes and we're still on the title.
Oh, my
That
bad.
wasn't right.
Oh.
You got it.
I think I can fix this still. Bear with me a second.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, do you see everything?
Yes.
Okay.
I see it.
So, I'm sorry, everyone. Mathematics as reality. The level 4 multiverse shift the boundary between physics and philosophy, suggesting that the nature of existence is purely mathematical. Oh, no, did I miss something? Okay. I was just doing testability. I'll go to the next slide. Okay. Uh, Existential perspective. Tegmark's hypothesis is hypothesis radically changes how we think about reality, suggesting that our universe is just one among countless others, challenging notions of uniqueness and centrality. Mathematics as reality. The level 4 multiverse shifts the boundaries between physics and philosophy, suggesting that the nature of existence is purely mathematical. Tegmark's multiverse hypothesis organizes the concept of multiple universes into four hierarchical and mathematics in four levels, each grounded in different aspects of physics and mathematics. While controversial and speculative, his framework provides a comprehensive way to think about the multiverse and its implications for understanding the universe, fine tuning, and the fundamental nature of reality. Natural selection versus design. This is a debate that's upcoming, but it's also arguments that have been thrown about in the last couple of weeks in an attempt to establish a creator or a designer. The argument from design asserts that the intricate complexity and functionality observed in biological life, and the universe suggests the existence of an intelligent designer. Just as a watch implies a watchmaker, the complex interdependencies of natural systems such as the human eye or DNA is argued to necessitate a purposeful creator. Proponents often cite the fine-tuning of universal constants and the improbability of such complexity arising by chance as evidence of divine design. This argument is rooted in the belief that natural process alone cannot fully explain the order and complexity of life. The argument from design posits that the intricate complexity of life and the universe points to an intelligent designer. While its concept is rooted in theology and philosophical analogy, naturalistic explanation like evolution and the anthropic principle challenge the necessity of invoking a supernatural creator. The debate remains central to discussions between theology and science, as we see in our own community. Scientific refutation. Science refutes the design argument by showing that complexity is not evidence of a designer, but a product of natural selection. Darwinian evolution explains how life intricacies arise naturally over time without the need for a creator. Furthermore, biology is full of examples of bad design that challenges the idea of an omnipotent designer. Take the human appendix, prone to inflammation and largely useless, or the recurrent laryngeal nerve in giraffe, which takes a ridiculously long detour due to evolutionary history. Such flaws are better explained by evolution than by divine perfection. Continue. Evolution and the Bible. The Genesis creation story is often interpreted literally by some religious traditions, conversation we were having a couple of days ago. But it is irreconcilable with the scientific evidence for evolution and an ancient Earth. Here's how the two conflict with illustrations of key points of contention. There we go. Timeline of creation. Genesis. According to a literal interpretation of Genesis, the earth and the universe were created in 6 days. Humans were created on the sixth day shortly after other animals. The Earth is often interpreted by young Earth creationists to be around 6 to 10,000 years old, based on biblical genealogy. Scientific evidence. The Earth is approximately 4.54 billion years old, as determined by radiometric dating of rocks and meteorites. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old, as evident by the cosmic microwave background radiation and the expansion of the universe. That light we were talking about at the beginning is CMB, not the light that emanates from the sun. That CMB, we can hear it, can't see it. Life evolves over billions of years, with the first life forms appearing around 3.8 billion years ago, and humans evolving from primate ancestors over the last 6 million years. Illustrations. If Genesis were true, dinosaurs, which lived about 65 million years ago, would have coexisted with humans. However, besides on Flintstones, there is no fossil record shows that humans and dinosaurs are separated by millions of years of evolution. Order of creation. Now, let's take this slow so that we don't have any misinterpretation of what the biblical narrative says. Genesis, the story suggests the following order of creation. Day 1, light, separating day and night. That gives you an earthly perspective. Sky and water, earthly perspective. Land, seas, and vegetation, earthly perspective. Moon, sun, moon, and stars. Now, the rest of the universe is being created. Now, here, sun, moon, and stars. This is the point you acknowledge the universe. Birds and sea creatures, land animals, and humans. Good. Vegetation prior to the sun. Just stay with me, folks. Timeline of creation. Scientific evidence. Stars and galaxies formed billions of years before Earth existed, contradicting the Genesis claim that Earth was created before the stars. However you want to twist that narrative, it is clear as day that it implies that the Earth was created before the stars. Vegetation could not precede the sun, as plants require sunlight for photosynthesis. Period. Birds evolved from theropod dinosaurs, meaning land animals preceded birds, not the other way around, as Genesis suggests. Illustration. The fossil record places the evolution of simple life forms, for example, bacteria, billions of years before complex plants and animals and humans. Genesis suggests vegetation and humans appeared almost simultaneously, which is inconsistent with scientific findings.
How was the first star formed? Gravity slowly shepherded the densest regions of hydrogen gas into compact clouds, which ultimately collapsed to form the first stars. When these primordial stars first began shining with...
Oh, sorry.
How was the first star formed? Gravity slowly shepherded the densest regions of hydrogen gas into compact clouds, which ultimately collapsed to form the first stars. When these primordial stars first began shining within the pitch-black void, they blasted the surrounding hydrogen gas with ultraviolet radiation. And that gives us the answer to.
Here we go. Let's continue. Origins of humans. Genesis. Humans were created in their current form from dust, Adam, and a rib, Eve, by divine intervention. Thus, this narrative interjects divine intervention, making it absolutely not scientific in any form, fashion, or possibility. This here, divine intervention compared to methodological naturalism makes this absolutely non-scientific, not even science of their time. This suggests humans are a special creation, separate from other animals. Scientific evidence. Humans share a common ancestor with other primates, as shown by the fossil record and genetic evidence. For example, humans share about 98 to 99% of their DNA with chimpanzees. Transitional fossils like Arthropithecus africanus, Lucy, and Homo habilis show a gradual evolution from hominins over millions of years. Illustration: the genetic similarities between humans and other primates is evidence of common ancestry. This directly contradicts the claim in Genesis that humans were uniquely created without evolutionary precursors. When you hear people ask who came first, man or woman, at the point that humans evolved, sexual reproduction was already long established. Female and male of other species already existed. There was no one before the other. Sexual reproduction was a thing for billions of years at that point. At least millions. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions. Mechanisms of creation. Genesis. Creation occurs through divine fiat. Fiat means let it be. With God speaking in life into existence. For example, let there be light. Life forms appear fully formed with no indication of gradual change. Evolution, scientific evidence. Evolution occurs through natural selection, mutation, genetic drift, and other mechanisms over vast timescales. Fossil evidence shows gradual transitions between species, such as fish evolving into tetrapods or reptiles evolving into mammals and birds. Illustration: the discovery of transitional fossils like Tiktaalik, a fish tetrapod intermediate, illustrates gradual evolution, contradicting the Genesis claim of fully formed species appearing spontaneously. Let's continue. Global flood and fossil layers. The flood story, Genesis 6-9, is often invoked to explain geological layers and the fossil records, claiming a global flood burying organisms in layers. Scientific evidence. Fossil layers are ordered according to age. The simpler organisms are in older strata and more complex organisms in newer layers. This order reflects evolutionary history, not a sudden global flood. Geological features like the Grand Canyon and sedimentary layers are formed over millions of years through erosion and deposition, not a single flood event. Illustration: marine fossils found at the top of a mountain, for example, the Himalayas, are explained by plate tectonics, not a global flood as described in Genesis. The Genesis creation story is irreconcilable with the scientific evidence for evolution and an ancient earth. It presents a timeline order and mechanisms of creation that conflict with well-established facts from geology, cosmology, biology, and genetics. While Genesis may hold symbolic or theological significance, it cannot be harmonized with the empirical evidence supporting evolution and Earth's antiquity. It cannot, I'm going to say it slow, it cannot be reconciled. Am I making myself clear for those in the back of the class? Cannot be reconciled.
What's the geologic timescale? Well, the Earth is old, really old. It's so old that it's had 4.6 billion birthdays, but it doesn't like to talk about it. People called geologists have counted up all the birthdays and made a big fancy chart to help remember them all. It's called the geologic timescale, and it's one of the most important things you need to know when you start to study geology. 4.6 billion years is a long time. Let's say this represents 100 years, or about a human lifespan. That human lifespan is only one pixel if we zoom out to 100,000 years. We then need 10 of those to get to a million years. To get to a billion years, we'd have to add that up 1,000 times. That's a really long time. There are so many Earth birthdays that we have to arrange them into phases. These phases are sometimes called eons. The eons are broken up into eras, which are broken up into periods and epochs. Geologists are apparently fond of words that start with the letter E. The first eon is called the Hadean. It's about 500 million years when the Earth is just a hot ball of rock, and the Moon is forming. What's up, Moon? Next is the Archean. Everything is chilled out a bit by now, and the continents are forming. This takes a really long time, almost 1.5 billion years, and life is starting to form in the oceans. As the Archean is ending, that new life starts to fart out oxygen into the atmosphere. After that is the Proterozoic, which means early life, but it really means very small life. During the Proterozoic, we get the first complex cells and the first things that are made up of more than one cell. The Proterozoic is also very long, about 2 billion years. As the Proterozoic is ending, we get the first plants and the first animals. The final eon is called the Phanerozoic, which means visible life. It started about 500 million years ago with an explosion of new and crazy-looking living things, and continues to this day. It's divided into 3 eras. The first era is called the Paleozoic, which means old life. But what it really means is squiggly life, or weird wormy life. It also means creepy crawly life. Mesozoic means middle life, but it really means dino life, or life that goes roaring. The Mesozoic ended with a giant asteroid that killed almost everything that went roaring. The third era, the Cenozoic, means new life, but it really means furry life and flappy flying life. We also got pretty looking things that bloom. There's lots of different furry and flappy things. There's things that go blub, things that squawk, and things that go awoo. There's also new things that roar, but they're much fuzzier than the old ones. That's the geologic timescale. Some say that humans have changed the Earth so much that we've entered a new period of geologic time called the Anthropocene. More on that next time. Until then, keep it curious.
Oops, nope. Oh boy. I'm sorry, let me get it right. A little too big. There you go. The problem of evil and natural disaster. The challenge of natural evil. This is a philosophical argument. The problem of evil and unnecessary suffering is a central challenge to the existence of an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good God. An all-powerful, an all-loving God is incompatible with unnecessary suffering caused by natural disasters and disease. Scientific explanation: natural disasters arise from plate tectonics, weather patterns, and other natural laws. Disease results from viruses, bacteria, and genetic mutations. Example, 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami. Over 230,000 deaths, including innocent children. The pandemic, for example, COVID-19, caused by natural biological processes. Apologists, arguments, and counter-arguments. Free will defense. Evil exists because God gave humans free will, allowing them to make moral choices. Without free will, genuine love, virtue, and moral responsibility would be impossible. Natural evil. Free will explains moral evil, for example, murder. but not natural evil, for example, earthquakes or diseases. Divine intervention, a truly omnipotent God, could design a world where free will exists without excessive or unnecessary suffering. The same way the narrative said, God said, let there be light. These are the same confinements that he has. None. If if free will can exist in heaven without evil, why not create such a world from the start? Got to go to heaven to have free will and no evil. Soul making the Odyssey. Argument: suffering and evil are necessary for personal and spiritual growth, leading to greater moral and spiritual development. I've heard that one from Jordan Peterson. Counter argument: unjust suffering. Suffering often seems arbitrary or excessive. For example, child dying in a natural disaster with no apparent moral or spiritual benefit. Inefficiency. An omnipotent God could achieve soul making without gratuitous suffering or through gentler means. Unequal distribution. Why does suffering vary so drastically among individuals and cultures if it is intended for growth? You all have equal merit in this suffering argument. Punishment for sin. Evil and suffering are consequences for human sin, either inherited, original sin, or individual. Disproportionality. Finite crime has an infinite punishment. The punishment often appears excessive or indiscriminate. For example, innocent children suffering. You can't get around that. Natural disasters, they cannot plausibly be linked to moral failings. How? I live in the hurricane belt. Hurricanes are a natural phenomenon. Are you saying that I'm being punished? My little island is being punished? The people on it are being punished? Majority of us are leftovers from the from the transatlantic slave trade. Do we ain't suffer enough? Omnibenevolence. A loving God would not punish in a way that causes gratuitous suffering. The greater good defense. The argument: evil and suffering are part of the divine plan, leading to a greater good that humans cannot comprehend. If we can't comprehend it, then how are you making the argument? That comes to the unfalsifiability. This argument cannot be tested or disproven, making it philosophically weak. You're establishing something for which you admit you have no comprehension. How can you give an argument, therefore? Unnecessary suffering. Gratuitous suffering, for example, animal pain in predation, does not appear necessary for any identifiable greater good. Remember, the argument is with the fall of man, sin came into the world, and all of a sudden, the lion had to eat the gazelle. Make that make sense? Anyway, moral parallel. Humans who allow suffering for the greater good are often condemned, raising questions about divine morality. If we do it as human beings, it is seen as sadistic, evil. Yet we accept these arguments because of the so-called nature of a God. Best of all possible worlds. God created the best possible world that balances free will, growth, and the potential for good with the inevitability of evil. How? Special pleading, imagination of alternatives. Everyone listening to me right now, without a glance, without thinking too hard, we can imagine a better world right now, without giving it too much of thought. Let that sink in for a minute. Logical flaws. The claim assumes limits on God's power, which contradicts omniscient, omnipotent, redundant suffering, instances of gratuitous suffering. For example, extinction events. 99.99% of all life that existed has gone extinct. All the hominids prior to us being here have gone extinct. We the last of the Homo group. Seemingly unnecessary even in this framework, right? And these are the philosophical arguments I'm bringing forward now. Skeptical theism. Humans cannot fully comprehend God's reasons for permitting evil. If we can't fully comprehend them, how are you making an argument for them? God's plan is beyond humans' understanding. However, this moral obscurity undermines our ability to understand or trust God's moral goodness. The inconsistency in apologetic claims to know God's reasoning or other actions, for example, creating humans by invoking mystery alone when faced with evil. You know everything else. But when it comes to suffering, how God works in mysterious ways. But you know exactly how God created the world and why we're here. This all becomes an unnecessary defense. If God's reasons are unknowable, theodicies become redundant and weaken theism's explanatory power. Philosophical counterarguments. Logical problem of evil. J.L. Mackie. If God is omniscient, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, evil should not exist. The coexistence of such a God with evil is logically incoherent. Evidential problem of evil. The sheer quantity and intensity of apparently gratuitous suffering makes it unlikely that an all-good, all-powerful God exists. Moral arguments against God. Allowing preventable suffering is morally indefensible. If humans have a moral duty to alleviate suffering, then why doesn't God? Suffering is better explained by a godless, indifferent universe governed by natural processes rather than by a benevolent deity. The Bible depicts God as a loving and just. Psalms 103 verses 8, and 1 John chapter 4 verse 8. Indiscriminate suffering contradicts this depiction. While apologists propose explanations for evil and suffering, they often fall short in addressing the severity, arbitrariness, and the gratuitous nature of many forms of suffering. Philosophical counterarguments highlights the inconsistencies in these defenses, strengthening the claim that existence of evil is incompatible with an omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent God. So let's round it up. Stenger concludes the presence of natural evil supports a naturalistic, not theistic view of the universe. Throughout history, humanity has sought to understand the mysteries of existence, how the universe began, how life came to be, and why suffering exists. In our earliest days, we turned to gods and myths, weaving stories to fill the gaps in our understanding. But over time, science, guided by methodological naturalism, you see that? Science, guided by methodological naturalism. What is methodological naturalism? Studying of the natural world without invoking supernatural or metaphysical claims, has illustrated these mysteries, showing us that natural processes, not divine intervention, shape the world around us. Methodological naturalism, yes, my favorite word, teaches us to seek answers within the framework of observable, testable evidence. It challenges us to rely on reason, not revelation, and to embrace the power of inquiry over the comfort of dogma. Victor Stenger's God, the failed hypothesis, builds on this foundation, demonstrating that we do not need God to explain the universe's origins, life's complexities, or even the profound sense of wonder that we feel when we look up at the stars. The evidence, or the lack thereof, speaks clearly. From the laws of physics to the processes of evolution, natural mechanisms provide sufficient explanation. Supernatural claims, on the other hand, crumble under scrutiny, not because they are disproven outright, but because they fail to provide any testable, reliable, or necessary. And so we come to the profound realization the absence of evidence is not just an argument against God's existence, it is a testament to the power of the natural world to stand on its own. This does not diminish our sense of awe or meaning. Rather, it deepens it. Study of the natural world is fascinating. Nothing more mind-blowing than that. I still look at a rainbow and amazed at it. I still look at an aircraft taking off every day and go, wow. It tells us that our understanding, our curiosity, and our shared humanity are more than enough. In embracing methodological naturalism, we find not just a foundation for atheism, but a celebration of human potential, the ability to seek truth, to question boldly, and to live without illusions. Stenger reminds us that science is not a denial of wonder, it is the greatest source. So let us move forward not with faith in the unseen, but with confidence that we can discover together through reason and evidence. I thank you for listening to me. It has been a pleasure to do this presentation, especially in the environment of the last couple of weeks. Juju,
Yeah,
you can
was
unshare my screen.
that was a great presentation. Beautiful slides. Sorry we didn't get to see all the slides, but
Oh,
I tried to be there for you.
my bad, everybody. I'm so sorry.
Oh my. But hey, maybe we can do this again on community of skeptics, or we could do it again here. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Maybe we'll wait a few days and you can go through it again if you want. Okay,
Yes,
with,
yes,
with
yes.
all the slides. Do you want to take questions from the audience, Sir Anthony?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'm about to drop the link. However, I will preface: if you weren't here from the beginning, don't get up on the panel because you're gonna be dead wrong. Okay? Because you're speaking out of context. All right? Yeah. So don't make me do it to you. But yeah, I'm dropping the link.
Again, I apologize that the screen wasn't completion. I tested everything and got it up there and did the slides change all animated. I'm sorry, but I guess it's when you're in slide mode, it sticks to the first screen. So
Or I'll talk to you later. I won't do that here. But
okay.
preparation is always key.
Mm.
Y'all listen to me one day though. But anyway, the link is in the chat. You're welcome to hit the panel. Even some of the people that are timed out because I'm not a man. So if you can't respect me as a woman, you got to get out of here. I don't play that. You know, y'all
Straight up.
can't defeat me on anything else, but you try to call me a man, and I won't tolerate that disrespect. Not as a black woman. You could take that somewhere else. That's all I got to say about that. Play stupid somewhere else. But yeah, that was an excellent presentation. That was really good work. Um,
Appreciate you.
Everybody has so much to say in the chat. Hit the
Nobody
link.
gonna hit that link.
Of
You
course
know
not.
they're not gonna hit that link.
Come on, y'all got to learn how to hit the link sometime. I stay hitting people's links. I stay on people's panels. Cause I ain't never scared. What? I ain't never
Never,
scared. I
never
ain't
scared.
scared.
Ain't never scared. I
Yeah,
ain't
yeah,
scared.
yeah. Yeah. Nobody gonna hit the link. Yeah,
Mhm.
y'all had so much to say. Well, anyway, again, if you were not here from the very beginning of the presentation, like if you weren't here listening to the Pseudo Killers theme song and heard the premise of the presentation, you're all over the place. Like you totally miss the point. Okay. Um, I will put this up again because Anthony did clear it up in the chat for you. And we've always said this. So this presentation was based off of a book. So
Yes.
when you're trying to tell Cedrick what he needs to do and what he not need to do, no, we don't need anything. We are communicators. Okay. Science tells you everything you need to know. All right. So if you don't get that, you don't get it. And I think the presentation, I'll let y'all up in a minute, that Cedrick presented was clear. In the beginning, I told y'all to take notes, right? But I think we will do it again. Give me a moment, nephew. I got you. Ron, I got you. But we do have a pseudo killer official on the panel, Chilimbwe. So you got it, Chilimbwe. You want to say anything?
Peace, everyone. Peace,
Bill?
everyone. Peace, man. Y'all hear me good?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes,
you.
you good.
Say you did an excellent job. I just wanted to congratulate you on that presentation, beloved. It was an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very informative.
Facts. Facts. So I want you to take note of this quote by Anthony. Science does not attempt to prove anything supernatural at any time. Science is about trusting the evidence. No evidence for supernatural. Like he gave it to you in the
Yeah.
chat, and y'all still crashing out. Y'all
And
still, hitting your head on the wall. I
and
mean,
that and the whole presentation started with establishing that premise squarely and firmly.
fact,
Even made the point you can be rooted in your culture, in your identity. That's why it's so annoying to hear the term white science or this science or that science, because methodological naturalism leaves makes no arguments about your belief systems. What it
mhm,
does, it evaluates reality, and we can test claims made about reality by means of methodological naturalism.
Facts. PKO Anthony on the panel. Sorry, I do pseudo killer officials first, no disrespect. You have the floor.
Yeah, well, peace, sis.
Peace,
Peace to
family.
the panel. Yo, said, great job, man. Great job.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, I don't know what they was missing, but
I
we
know,
deal
right?
we deal with evidence, and I'm sorry, but there's just no evidence for God. I mean, there's things how we feel. That's okay. How you feel about this or whatever you may not understand, and that's okay. But that's where you invoke the God and where your understanding stops.
Mm-hmm.
So God is all over the place. You know what I'm saying? But when you're dealing with science, we don't believe anything.
Right.
We trust the evidence.
Mm-hmm. Adhere to the
That's what
evidence.
that is. It's just that simple. We live in a real world, and the only way to understand what's happening in this real world is through the scientific method. You got to collect evidence. And if there's no evidence, you have nothing to go on. Hearsay is not evidence. I'm sorry. That's just not what it is. And when it comes down to you in the real world going to, through the court of law, it's going to be scientifically based, whether you get locked up or not. If you're sick, you're going to the hospital or whatever, it's going to be scientifically based on your recovery. That's going to be scientifically based. Now you can say that, well, we prayed for you and that's why you got well, but why did God make me sick in the first place? You know what I'm saying? So, that's what we invoke. And like I say, that's okay for you to believe that, but don't tell us we believe a book or we believe this. We don't believe none of it. We trust the evidence. That's what that is. We trust the evidence. So
Yep.
if you ain't got no evidence, I'm sorry, I can't rock with it. that's me. I can't do it.
And the counterintuitive nature of science itself. We do not engage in trying to prove my position right. That would be confirmation bias. I go out of my way to prove it wrong. I find every way that this thing that I'm thinking could be wrong. And when I can't find a way to prove it wrong, then I accept it as tentative. Even then, I require a future novel prediction to solidify a bit more this position that I have with all the data that was collected during that falsification process. So at the point that science speaks or says something, it is at the end, not at the beginning of a process.
Got it. Go ahead, Super Wavy, and then Ron Perkins.
I'm gonna be real quick, man. I'm just here giving my support to Uncle Said, giving my support to the pseudo killers and Aunt Juju. Uncle Said, great presentation. I think you ready. I think you ready to get in the ring with that one, Uncle Said, man. They gonna be at your neck.
I appreciate you for waving. You know what it is. Chop it up. See if we can get it. It's out there. It's hard. It's out there. Do what you need to do, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have to confront and deal with that information, because that information is just but one. Again, the bibliography, I didn't go through the bibliography. I got 2 slides of bibliography. This is well documented, well supported, well substantiated understanding of reality. and it and I know that last conclusion that nature is indifferent. It operates by means of these forces, and it has no intent and doesn't really give a damn about us. We care about us. That's why we come up with vaccines. That's why we produce food that is to sustain our beings. That's why we come up with dwellings and to shield ourselves from the natural elements, right? Because we have a desire to continue to exist. Not that nature has any intent for us other than to get rid of your ass. Excuse my French.
Facts.
All right,
Nature's
peace. Y'all
always
take it easy.
all right.
Appreciate you,
Thank you,
baby.
Super Wavy. Facts. The God Killer always say nature's trying to kill us. You know, it didn't take me long to understand that. You know, like when I first was introduced to like Amon Ra Squad and things like that. It didn't take me long to figure that out. You know, but more and more that statement becomes real, super real. Ron, you are up.
Hey, peace to everybody on the panel. How's everybody doing?
Peace, Ron.
Good. Cedric, you really gave a very, very good presentation. So, but just for my just clear understanding, what you're saying and what you were showing, and 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 I'm going to put this in quotations, proving is that within science, science only cares about what happens in the real world. You're not necessarily saying that there is no God, except that there is no God within reality as we know it. Is that fair to say?
Um, that's pretty much fair to say, yes. So
So
in
so
reality, there is no God because God exists outside of reality.
right.
And the fact that no one can make any claim about outside of reality when when we can't get beyond our smallest plant time yet, where the four fundamental forces break down. If
Right.
we can't reason to that point, how is anyone going to make a claim what exists outside of it?
Yeah, I agree with you. What do you have to say about scientists who are um, working on the fact that, like you said, since we can't get beyond the Planck time and the Planck length, that they consider that to be a limitation. That so based on that, they're saying that there must be something outside of that that's more fundamental than nature.
Um,
How do you address that, or you
so
don't address it?
in the presentation, there were several aspects where scientists was trying to understand reality prior to this particular point. Now, saying prior to in terms of time, right, is always a very philosophical, difficult question to
Hmm.
address. Why? Because time, as we understand it, came with the expansion of the universe, right?
Right.
However, you saw me discussing the multiverse,
Hmm.
the self-contained universe, quantum fluctuation. So the question is there really anything before this? These are all questions, right? To posit a definitive position, which for example, first cause, that's been disproven. We don't need a first cause. So the claims that have been made as to refer to that necessity of something prior, there is no substantiation for that, neither from a philosophical nor theoretical physics position.
Okay, yeah, that's basically what I understood you to say. That it's a beyond those certain parameters. There's, at least in the estimation of science, you're saying that there's no need to go beyond that. Although there are scientists who are trying to find things beyond that. You're
I
saying
don't,
based
I
on,
don't, I don't think that that's what I said.
hmm,
I said the philosophical notion that there must be a prior is being challenged with things like quantum fluctuation, and then you have concepts of infinite regress like the multiverse. So there are different hypotheses, but none necessarily posits that there must be this claim uncaused cause. That is the only reason for a hard suggestion of something prior to that hot dense state. Now, that hot dense state could and might have been all that has been ever necessary. Right, that is where the theoretical physics is going to, especially now understanding quantum fluctuations and the emergence of particles without a supposedly cause.
Yeah.
So
And,
okay, I
and
know
let me
other people on the panel. I'll just mute up now. I know there are other people
Ron.
on the panel. Yes.
So when you're talking about God, you're talking about something that is, or anything supernatural, something that's out of the closed system. The universe is a closed system. It would be impossible for us to try to quantify or qualify that.
Yeah, so I agree with what you're saying, but I'm thinking more in lines of what Donald Hoffman and the work that he and his team were working on in terms of consciousness being outside of reality, and that's actually reality being a projection of consciousness.
I
But
think
again, that's a different
that's a
discussion for a
different
different time.
conversation,
Yeah.
though. That's a whole different conversation. Madan, and you have exactly 4 minutes and hold on. I'm gonna give you exactly 4 minutes. I'll tell you when to start, Madan. You got 8 more seconds. And after them 4 minutes, you out of here. You got it, Madan. Go ahead. What you got to say?
Peace, salute. I don't know where I got a time limit, but I understand at the same time. But what I wanted to say, I wanted to ask the brother Cedrick, where does DNA come from? What's the origins of DNA?
The origins of DNA.
Yeah.
There's a process of life evolving.
No, I'm saying like, how did DNA get to the Earth?
DNA didn't need to get to the Earth. We have you are talking about abiogenesis, and you have the RNA synthesis theory that is currently the leading hypothesis, which deposits that early molecules can form and creating self-replicating peptides.
So explain to me. So how did all this DNA get enough, what I would call intelligence, for a lack of a better word, to format all the different organs in the body, and structure in a way that it functions a body as like as a machine. So can you break that down for me?
I think I'm gonna have to do a presentation on RNA and early evolutionary processes, because it's not a 1, 2, 3 very easy explanation. For example, you got to understand that the first cells were very simple. You had an RNA strand. You most likely didn't even have a nucleus. Eventually, these self-replicating RNA strands, used with the use of peptides, formed a single early primitive cell, right? Life exists on this planet 3 billion years. Like the slide indicated, if you would look at humans on the scale of life, we would be exactly 1 pixel. So there is billions of years of evolution. How we know that it's a continuous process of building on top of each other, a very simple and easy way to understand that is look at endogenous retroviruses. For in our genome exists a virus that was active 12 million years ago. Humans only exist 300,000 years. We have in our genome a virus, an indigenous retrovirus that was active 12 million years ago. Now, just let's use our imagination for a second to explore how that would be in our genome.
Bruh,
Magic.
bro. Hold on. Now let's come on, Cedric. Come on, let's be for real. Now, when we look at the difficulty, I just want to hold on just real quick. The difficulty.
Slow down.
Bro, I'm not moving. I only said 2 words.
We were going to
We got 30 seconds.
how
only said 2 words, bro. Oh my goodness.
would have gotten there. How would have gotten there? How do you think it would have gotten there?
Oh, man, I'm gonna ask. Who was this? I don't know if you got a ad lib behind you or something, Cedric. I don't know what that is coming in. Oh, that's Savior. But let me say, but never mind. My 30 seconds is up, man. Never mind, man. You can go to the next person.
Right. So I have a question for you, Madan. Do you have a question based off the presentation, sir?
Not for real, because I wanted to hear it in his own.
Thank you. Sabia? Sabia.
Xavier, you're on mute.
You on mute, Sabia.
Come off mute, Xavier. There you go.
Oh shit. Oh, Juju, you crazy.
No
I knew it was
profanity, please.
I apologize. You crazy. I knew it was finna happen because I knew he didn't have anything according to the presentation. That was a beautiful presentation. And what you just said about those endogenous retroviruses being 12 million years old, that's a dagger. That is a dagger. And there's no way they can run away from it. And the only way they can is try to ask you a question to try to befuddle the what you just said. So him not understanding DNA and evolution, it's not gonna change. It's not gonna change. So there's some people who just want to believe that we come from a man's rib, and that's where they're gonna stay stuck. But it was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you, Xavier. Appreciate it. He said, "Bruh."
You got this, Cedric. I'll give me 5 minutes.
Abiogenesis is a study. There are different hypotheses, but when we look and talk about evolution, we're talking about life already being established. Now, that's always the God of the gaps, or the area where they suspect that they can interject the God. However, with more and more evidence and more information coming above water, that you can see, we can start to formulate answers to these questions as well, because that's what science is continuing to do. You stay studying, you stay looking at the data, right? And these questions are also being able to be answered. Now, we have mechanisms. What we don't have is a complete theory. And why is it elusive? It is almost impossible to create the early conditions of Earth 3 billion years ago. Let's be real.
How long ago? 3 billion years ago?
Billion years ago. Billion.
Not 3 years ago. Not 3 years ago. Not 30 years ago. Not 3 billion years ago. People act like evolution happened overnight.
Again,
and they say evolution happened on a daily basis because it's a process that they think they should see on a daily basis. Like this conversation is weird, Joe.
Again,
they think life is just this one little bubble, and everything just for us is just right there. It was just created right there, and we're outside of the rest of the planet. It's weird. Like this whole stuff is weird, man.
Awe Diras in the chat says, science proves God doesn't exist. When? Where? How? No, science doesn't prove God doesn't exist. The hypothesis is God. Now, you examine the claims made for and of this God with regards to reality, with regards to nature. And we use methodological naturalism to answer questions of nature. When we compare that to the claims made for and of a God, there is no evidence to support these claims. So you see the inherent mistake in how you address that?
Hey, hey, I was just thinking about something said when you said God is the hypothesis. God is the hypothesis. I think I said something similar to Pastor Bennett when he said the scientific theory is a hypothesis. I said, well, if that's the case, God is a hypothesis also. There's no evidence to prove it, but with everything with evolution, there's evidence to back up evolution. There's no evidence to back up God but books. A book written by some people who didn't know that that a man couldn't be inside the belly of a fish.
Yeah, not yeah, at this point I don't even address those type of arguments anymore. I just, it's like it's a theistic God, right? And it has these fundamental components, right? These the three omnis, and with purpose and intent, right? And then there are further claims made about the activities of this God and his involvement with reality. The moment there is an engagement with reality, there is evidence. So we are now examining these claims, and at the end of the day, there is no evidence to support the claims, neither from a philosophical position or from an empirical position. So that's how that's the reason we can use science when addressing these claims. However, science makes no provision for or against a God. So to interject a God, for example, in any of your hypotheses has rendered your work unscientific. It has left the philosophical confinement of methodological naturalism, aka science. So when we hear arguments at the end of the day, when we prove that the biblical claims have no merit, and then the goalpost is moved to say, well, they were doing science of their time, or they were engaging in observation. Stop it. You needs to stop it. There's a clear distinction. At the moment you interject supernatural forces, you ain't there yet. You're not engaging in science. You're using your intuition to answer a question that that within the modern context we answer by means of empirical data and observable, testable, falsifiable evidence.
And you know what's crazy? You just said something that made me think about a video I was watching the other day. Some of them I'll be posting in the chats for people to check out. But think about all the people during the Salem witch trials that was killed off of people's intuition. They intuited that some of these women were wicked, and they were burned at the stake, or they were forced to all because of people's intuition.
And look what faulty logic produced: unfalsifiable testing methods. I'm going to drown you for 5 minutes, and if you come up alive, you're a witch.
You're a witch.
And if you didn't come up, well, too bad. That's unfalsifiable. That's unfalsifiable.
Since you brought it up, the best part of the Salem witch trial is that the witch that they were actually pointing the finger at, Tikjaba, she ain't even get burnt up. It was It was like white tea people, white tea people. It was like white tea people on white tea people crime. It's just the funniest thing when you read the history. You feel me? It was Cuba, which is like they don't. I think they say mostly indigenous, but they don't. I don't think they really know because I never get conclusive. Then there was like an African woman, right? Neither
Mhm.
one of them got burnt. Okay, it was all white tea people. I was like, oh wow. Y'all know what y'all doing. Like, you know, it was like a wife, a couple of husbands. It was wild. I was like, what kind of drugs y'all on? But you know, we know why they were having
Yeah.
that moment of hysteria, right? It was some type of organism within the bread or something. The bread
It
was
was a fungus that was
fungus.
a
Mhm.
fungus that was growing in the wheat, which caused which produced a psychedelic state, right? It caused um, um, hallucinations, right?
Facts.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the same psilocybin effect that you can get from some mushrooms, right? And processing the wheat in those type of days, remember their hygiene and sanitary levels were not at that state either. So again, bread would mildew and mold, and they would still consume it, right? So that caused the spread even greater. Yeah.
And another thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, a lot of the meat that they was eating was half moldy.
Yep. So, so you have all these spores, and but they traced it back. That was mass hysteria due to this particular fungal infection that affected the wheat during that time.
We have American Dream on the panel. Also, it's almost to the 2 hour mark, so in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If nothing else is said, we're ending the live. Thank you for the support. It will be up on Pseudo Killer's channel for people to rewatch it who weren't here from the beginning so they can get a clear context on what was being said today. I thought we
Yeah.
cleared it up when just started having this Q&A, but I think some people are still confused. But y'all got to learn how to listen without bias. Still hitting your heads on the wall. I just want to let you know that. However, I'm going to let American Dream, you know, have the floor now.
Hey, peace, Juju. How are you? Long time.
I know. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, peace to the panel and peace to the chat, peace to the pseudo killers. It's been a while. Blessings
Appreciate
to
you.
y'all.
Thank
Of
you.
course, of course, peace to the champ, Cedrick Ortega. Blessings to you, said. I
People,
missed the
brother.
presentation, said. I only saw the title, and I just came in to ask you if you're suggesting that science can prove that God doesn't exist.
Um,
I'll
you
watch
know
the
what?
show back.
Yeah, watch the
I'll
show
watch the
back.
show back a little later, but I just wanted to kind of get kind of like if you could just if is that what you're saying? Yes or
if
no?
you if you look at the title, you'll see the failed hypothesis, right? So when you put the concept of a god, the hypothesis of a god, the omniscience, and all the claims, if you put that to a hypothesis and you apply methodological naturalism, you see that there's no evidence to support these positions, and there is a strong evidence to the contrary, both in a philosophical from a philosophical perspective and from an empirical data perspective.
Right. I mean, I understand and I agree with you that there's no evidence that God exists. You won't find any evidence that God exists. But I also thought that there was also no evidence that He doesn't exist. That you also couldn't find evidence that it doesn't.
So the absence of evidence in this case is the absence of evidence. That
Is
is
the
evidence.
evidence of absence.
Yes, that is evidence against the claims for and of a God. If we look again at the premises in which this God is established or operate, if you test that by means when especially when there are claims made about reality, we can test these claims, and then we see again that there is no evidence to support these claims. Now, science itself makes no remark for and of a God. However, the moment you posit a God to engage in a scientific hypothesis, you are no longer engaging in methodological naturalism.
Um, okay, I'll just take it at that. The evidence of absence, the absence of evidence is evidence of absence. I'll take it at that for now. I know Juju said y'all are on the 2 hour mark, so I'm not gonna run my mouth much longer than that. Other than to say, I just don't know if I'm holding on to that the idea of evidence of absence of evidence is evidence of absence. I think that's kind of like you know I think that's going a little bit a mile that I don't think I want to go to anyway. I think it's fair to say you can't prove it either way. I think that's what's been agreed upon for centuries, and I don't think that the idea that evidence of that absence of evidence proves that God does not exist. I just don't see that.
Can I say this real quick, Cedric? So we're dealing in the framework of methodological naturalism, dealing in the framework of science. Science deals with evidence. That should be clear for you.
Sure, with science, if we were dealing with evidence, we would have evidence that he doesn't exist. And saying that
No,
absence of evidence
no,
is evidence.
no,
Like I don't know if
no,
I would agree that absence
no,
of evidence is evidence.
No one's
no,
saying that. No one's saying
no.
that. So see, the thing is, if there was evidence of any of these deities, any of these gods, the evidence will present itself. There hasn't been no evidence of Enki, Enlil, Thor, Zeus, or any of the other ones. So until that evidence presents itself, I don't have to accept the claim that there is a possibility or there might be a God. Until that God shows me the evidence that it exists. People have been speculating and talking about gods for millennia.
Facts.
But still no God that none of these people has ever spoke of has shown us evidence.
Anthony, do you want to
Right.
add
And
to that?
Yeah,
sure. Thanks for your time, Juju. Thanks for letting me in.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
yeah. I just want to say this here. I'm a millionaire, but I don't have no evidence of it. I ain't got no money, but I'm a millionaire. You dig what I'm saying?
Right.
I
We don't
need
believe
evidence
you.
to that.
I don't believe you. You ain't, yeah, show me the money.
Show me the money.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, Miss Juju.
Only
I mean,
thing that
how
gets a
can
pass is God,
I
though.
don't? What bothers me is there's no evidence for it. That doesn't mean it's not. You can't prove it. I mean, that's how you prove stuff with evidence.
Right.
You know. I mean, wait. Oh, help me understand this. Please
I'm
help me.
that the whole argument philosophically falls apart. Shout out to my boy C4. You're right. Pat on my body, right, my brother. uh, um, how do you make a claim about anything when there is no there to make the claim for?
Right.
How? So there is no there. What are you pointing at? There is nothing there. But I'm pointing at it there and telling you there's a there. When we examine what's supposed to be there, there's nothing. Yet you tell me, well, you can't say that there's nothing there because you can't see that. Well,
That's
it
so
doesn't
fallacious.
logically follow.
All the arguments are fallacious because they're either circular, or have no basis in actual logic.
Yeah.
Like if
or
you
they're
can
biased.
say,
Or they're
if you
biased
can
because
say,
they're religious and they just, can't take
right,
it. But go ahead.
right. If you can say
just
that the evidence of absence isn't the absence of evidence, then every person who's ever been falsely convicted of a crime should be out of jail. The hell?
Oh my goodness.
But
Go
again,
ahead.
but again, you're not saying that that scientists who are looking at the potential for something to be outside of this reality. You're not saying that they're barking up a wrong tree, right? You're not saying that.
Until they can show us there's something outside of this reality, yes, they are.
So again, the work by Donald Hoffman and his team, that's They are working in the
Is it a
framework of science.
scientific theory?
Yeah, he has
Have they
he has a theory.
qualified their work yet?
Yeah, he has a theory though, right?
Is it a scientific theory?
Yes, it
He
is
has
a
a
scientific theory.
hypothesis. He has a hypothesis.
I mean, he calls it a theory. He
What
calls it a theory.
fact supports it about consciousness being outside of reality or reality being outside of consciousness? Because I know the reality that I create is within the consciousness that I'm in. When I'm unconscious, I'm in reality, but I'm not doing anything to create it. I'm just existing. I am sleep. So when I'm sleep, I'm still in this thing that we call reality. I'm just not consciously participating in it. I am consciously participating in it when I am active and moving and making a life and doing things actively, even though I'm still conscious while I'm asleep.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long
In
discussion.
this
I don't
reality.
we don't have time for this discussion, but I would just suggest that you go back and take a look at his work, and then you can make your own conclusions. You can draw your own conclusions from it. But again,
I'm just saying this reality is what we
Cedrick
live
or
in.
Anthony, did y'all want to respond to Ron in this?
Again, you're coming up here with a theoretical hypothesis that these theoretical physicists explore, right? And it's playing with the mind. Sean Carroll does it all the time. These are great mind-provoking ideas. However, when it comes to substantiating them, there is nothing to substantiate them. So,
and another thing, Sunchild, that's a theory is another one of those words where, you know, in science, it's totally different than what's presented on the streets, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
A scientific theory, it's real, because what a scientific theory does, it organizes facts. So in order for it to be a scientific theory, you have to have facts, and it's gonna present all the facts. When we say a scientific theory, that's what's happening. Now, just because somebody said something and he calls it a theory, no, but you have to understand that there's a difference. The same way with nothing. What you think is nothing is totally different when you're dealing with the cosmos. So you have to get the...
Hello?
You done, Anthony? They might have got a call. Cedrick, you got final words.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for dropping in. I'm sorry again. I'm gonna have my expert and Juju explain to me what I did wrong, because the next time I'm coming back with another one. These conversations give me ideas on what I need to work on, and I need to do these presentations. I see some pedals been rattled. Go think about the video, watch it back, slow it down, and examine the information without pushing back against it so easily. Yeah, I know it's easy for me. I'm an atheist. I have no need for belief in God, but I'm giving you tools to examine reality. That's all it is. Tools to examine reality. Like I stated in the beginning, your philosophical or your religious ideas can stay intact, but don't deny science. With that, I want to say thank you once more. Juju, you are always a gracious host. Sabio, Anthony, shout out to Chip, my homie Casimir Cowlington in the chat. With that, I'll say good night.